Okay, so Congress has just certified the election of Donald Trump, basically finalizing the fact that he's going to be president for the next 4 years. And I want to argue that that is a really good thing. And I don't mean that the election of Donald Trump is a good thing. I mean the certification and the fact that it has gone by in an unnoteworthy way. In other words, the first time I had ever paid attention to the certification of election results for the president was 4 years ago during January 6th, when the Capitol of the United States was attacked in order to try and prevent the certification of Joe Biden. Before then, the only thing I had ever made note of was inaugurations. I'd never really given it any thought. So this is a big deal, and it's a big deal for a couple of reasons. One, it means that there's a peaceful transfer of power, which is pretty new in terms of the history of the world. And it's also still kind of rare, right? It doesn't happen everywhere in the world where one party or one person who has power acknowledges that the people want a change, and so then they hand the power over to the person who wins the vote. So that's a good thing. That means that to some degree, right, our country remains one that follows the basic tenets of democratic transitions of power. Now, something else that's really interesting about it is the fact that Harris, right, Kamala Harris, was the person who oversaw the certification of the results. In other words, as the president of the Senate, the vice president is the president of the Senate, meant that she was in charge of that. And so that's especially important because she's literally the person who lost the election. So it's not all that common to have the person who, in fact, lost the election be the person to certify the election. But also in this particularly fraught political time, I think that's a big deal. In other words, yes, Mike Pence did the same thing, but he wasn't the person who lost the election, right? He wasn't running for president. So it's a big deal that he certified it, and that is certainly commendable. But in her case, right, she literally was the person who was trying to win the presidency, and in theory could try and leverage her current position of power to try and do something horrible, but she hasn't. Now you might say, well, but she's constrained by the rules that were recently passed to make it even harder for the vice president to make this a thing. But notice that the people who passed that rule were Democrats. It was signed by Joe Biden. So in other words, the Democrats signed a rule to help protect election integrity and continue to maintain that rule even when it doesn't benefit them. And that's how democracy should work.